producers of content for Discovery. In my opinion, and I'm a little biased, I think he's the best reality show producer in Hollywood. This is Peter Welsh, who owns a boxing gym in South Boston, and was my boxing trainer a long fucking time ago. Any questions? Who's got the first question? Come on, don't make this like one of our press conferences.
What was the inspiration for doing this show versus like when you did The Ultimate Fighter? What was the inspiration that made you say, let's do this show now?
First off, let me say this isn't The Ultimate Fighter. What you're going to see here today is not The Ultimate Fighter. Completely different than The Ultimate Fighter. And second of all, I love the sport of boxing, contrary to popular belief with the boxing guys. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for boxing. And Peter. And it all just sort of came together. So when we did the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, I actually brought Pete out. Pete was the boxing coach for the first 3 seasons of Tough. And Craig got to know Peter, and, you know, Pete has a gym back there putting on fights with all these other gyms and doing the things that he was doing. And Craig called me one day and said, what do you think about this? What do you think about doing a show? I said, I fucking love it. I love it. So we got into it. And
yeah, I mean, it was just, I was talking to Peter and I was asking him what he was doing, and he said, well, every week we're trying to put these smokers together, and South Boston gym against the Dorchester gym against the North Boston gym. I thought, that's a pretty good idea for the show. How's it working? He goes, oh, you know, we're putting it together, and every week we're trying to get these fights. So I said, I called Dana. I said, you want to do this with me? I said, I think it could be kind of quiet. I said, we'd never make it like Ultimate Fighter, but we would take a deeper look into the characters, deeper look into the trainers, and kind of get a real essence of the city, and kind of make South Boston a real character. I can say some bad words, right? They've shot some shit shows in South Boston, really fucked up shows, and so we decided to take the real heart of what makes South Boston, and that's boxing, and try and instead of kind of make them look like idiots, really show what boxing means to Boston, and especially South Boston, the trainers. It's a gritty look at it. It's more like a documentary, not really a reality show. We shot it a lot different. We made it a character, and we brought in some Pete's guys that he's known all his life, and they're quite good at training and, you know, making great stories. And the fighters have some great stories.
And like Peter was saying outside, you know, boxing is a huge tradition in South Boston. They have a St. Patty's Day show every year where the kids, little kids in town, fight. You know, in this boxing match. Peter fought in it when he was 8. His son fought in it this year when he was 7. It's like, or a couple years ago when he was 7, and now it's 80 years.
Over 80 years.
Over 80-year tradition in South Boston.
There's a series of events that happen in Southie, and it's a celebration of the evacuation day when we chased the British out of Boston. No offense to them, but we celebrate that by putting these fights together. And there's a series of other events that go on for St. Patty's Day, and this is like the biggest event of all the events for me. We fill the Muni up. It's the oldest rec center in South Boston, and you know, we match the kids up according to ability, and they grow up to be police and fire and politicians and attorneys and whatever they're going to be. They don't all turn into, you know, professional fighters or go off to be national amateur champions, but they take part in something that's special to us, and you know, they can say that they used to box as a kid, and you know, how many of us can say that? You know, so it's just one of those things. Somewhere along the line, I always used to use the mantra, I never trust a guy who's never been punched in the face. It was easier to do business with a guy you knew on those terms, but I've grown a little bit since then. And you know, that's the spirit of Southie. That's the culture, the tradition. I got guys that freely gave their time to teach me the sport, and now I do it. And I still have some of those old times around. Eddie Kelly's in his 80s, TC's 72. So Mikey Larkin, I got him in a picture on the new gym with my neighbor Stevie McDonald, who lived underneath me. Boxing Freddie Roach, and Freddie Roach was like 9 years old. So Freddie came through that same program. You know, there's a wealth of talent There's a long-running history and tradition, and that's what we do. That's our lifestyle, and that's it in a nutshell.
And but like I've said before in other interviews this week, you know, obviously the Boston connection for me personally, and Pelagian too, because me and Pelagian have been together for so long, made all the sense in the world with Peter in South Boston. But what Peter just explained to you, same stuff goes on in Philly, Detroit, Los Angeles, Miami, and the list goes on and on. This thing works anywhere. London, Australia. I mean, this thing works all over the world.
So are you guys talking about then, if it's successful this first year, taking it to other cities and?
Yeah.
We gotta talk Discovery that.
Yeah.
We're talking about it.
And you gotta make it out of season 1 first,
Yeah.
so.
Well, what
We
is,
don't wanna get our head over the skis, but just, you know, obviously when you get into a project like this, and especially the way that I think, you start thinking about all these things. And I love the show, I think it's great. We'll see if the world agrees with us tomorrow.
what is Discovery's commitment? How many episodes are there going to be?
It's 8 episodes right now, it's an 8-episode order, and, you know, it depends on how well it does, you know. They're looking for it to do really well, and if it does, then we'll get a second season. Second season can be 12 episodes, could be 24 episodes, you don't know.
Dana, you talk a lot about going to Boston. It's very dear to your heart. How dear for you was to start all this project in Boston?
Yeah, it just, you know, it worked out. It all lined up and just sort of happened, and I love it. I mean, it couldn't be any more perfect. Like I said, you know, the show starting in South Boston and starting with Peter, so it's awesome. It's perfect.
Do you have any boxing memories of you when you were in Boston?
Do I? Yeah, a lot.
Just, you know, a few
was
of them.
pretty much, I mean, I used to box at the Somerville Boxing Club, and then I went after him. I sought him out to hook up with Peter, and I was literally with Peter my entire time in Boston until I went back to Vegas.
You know, a funny story, you know, Dana was looking to box, he was tracking me down, and I'm like, who is this guy? I'm working with the young kids trying to build a boxing program. Didn't have time for this guy, but he was relentless, pursuit. And, you know, I said, I'll get rid of him, I'll spar with him. So he came in the gym, I sparred with him, and it didn't go so well for a beginner that he was, but he came back the
Didn't
next
go well
day.
for me.
Yeah, he came back the next day, and then the next day, so, you know, I said, this guy's got balls, I'm gonna keep him around. And now he's the biggest promoter on the planet.
Dana, I know you mentioned, you know, utilizing Peter and stuff, but, you know, when you hear about Massachusetts and boxing, obviously the name that comes true is Mickey Ward. Did you guys talk to Mickey at all and kind of get some input from him, you know, in terms of, you know, the show or anything along those lines? He's shown a propensity to be a big fight fan, especially
Yeah, no,
following the UFC.
we knew exactly what we wanted to do. There's tons of guys from that area, you know, that are big guys too. You know, Vinny Pazienza's from there. Peter used to get Pazienza ready for all the fights. Peter was one of his sparring partners. You know, there's tons of guys from there, but no, we knew what we wanted. We knew what this was about. It was about South Boston.
And my question, you kind of touched on it earlier, Mr. Jim, but the smoker situation is about as grassroots as it comes, and the way you like to shoot these things. You mentioned that South Boston became a character, or is a character in this series. Was that just the perfect connection?
Yeah, it's a great culture, great city, you know, and it just has a lot of heart, and so I think that comes through in the people. I mean, I think you'll see that in this episode and as it grows. I just think that culture is really, just really wonderful, and I think it hasn't been shown like this before. So I hope we did a good job with it.
True, and like Peter said outside, Peter was saying that boxing is very blue collar. It comes from these, you know, these old tough neighborhoods, and you know, anybody who knows anything about Boston, South Boston, is that neighborhood for sure.
And our company does blue collar television. When we go do like American Chopper and Wicked Tuna, and it's really just really blue collar workers is what we specialize in. So you got other companies that were doing boxing. They didn't know how to do it the right way. They didn't really feel the culture. They couldn't get their arms around it because they live in fucking LA. But you know, if you know, it's really the truth. So if you come from a blue collar background like I did, you deal with guys that grew up like we all grew up, then you can actually go back to your roots and make a television show that will hopefully inspire.
How much of the show is personality and character driven versus sport driven? Because, you know, we've seen shows like The Contender, you know, other boxing shows fail, because I think that was a big part of it. They just tried to make it a competition. There was no characters. It seems like with South Boston, I know South Boston's a very,
I
very
think the
lively
biggest,
city,
I think
very
the
lively
biggest
place.
problem with the Contender, the thing where they really made the biggest mistake was, everybody in this room is a fight fan, we all know, you don't edit fights. You don't ever edit fights, and I think what happened was, that thing was so overproduced. Yeah, overproduced, and you had a lot of big-time guys involved, and I guarantee you, they sat down and started watching some of the fights, and they were like, man, this isn't a great fight. So what we'll do is, we'll cut it up, put in some slow-mo, we'll do this and that. Sacrilegious to fight people, you don't do that. You show the whole fight, whether you think the fight sucks or not, you show the whole fight from the beginning to the end, uncut, unedited, and you let people decide what, because you're gonna have people who think, you know, well, that was a pretty good technical fight, this kid's pretty good, or this and that. You're gonna have a group of people that are gonna say that fight sucked. But I got to see the fight and I got to make my own judgment. I think that's the biggest mistake they made on that show.
And that's what we did on The Ultimate Fighter. I mean, that's how Ultimate Fighter is. Fights can suck and we hate them, but we let them play. And in this, you'll see the fight. But to answer your question directly, it's a lot more about character. Because you'll know who these guys are. You'll see their homes. You'll see how they live. You'll see how they train. You'll see how they talk to the trainers. So when you go into the ring, when they go into fight, you're rooting for somebody. You're going to be rooting for him or maybe both. But you might be rooting for the coach and not the guy. But you're going to find a guy to root for in every episode.
And contrary to what some of the coaches have said on The Ultimate Fighter, the thing that I love about Pelagian's style of shooting reality television is it's fly on the wall. It's you know, we always have these cases where every season, like, you know, Ronda Rousey last season, and then there's been other coaches who've said, oh, I felt like I was this or that. Cameras are in there, and you go in there and you do what you're doing, and you come out however you come out at the end.